Mute and unmute when people in here are talking.
Okay, yeah, if everybody can stay muted unless they're speaking, it'll just make listening to the everyone else a lot easier. And for the people in the meeting room, Jesse will turn the microphone on and please get close enough so we can hear you. So this will be a planning commission hearing on the draft zoning proposal that we've been working on for a couple of years. I'll do just a brief explanation of the process so everybody knows where we are and how it's going to proceed. And then I'll open it up to some questions. And then really the purpose of the hearing is to get comments from the broader public, because as Jesse mentioned, a lot of times we have planning commission meetings and nobody shows up is more of the tradition. So getting some public comment is really good. So this is our first public hearing. We're required to have this, and then after the hearing, or at the concluding of the hearing, I'm hoping that the planning commission can vote to approve the language. And if we want to make any changes, we can do that at the hearing. And then we send it on to the select board, and they warn that draft document. And in 15 days, they'll hold their own hearing, and the select board can make as many changes as they want, as long as they're not incredibly significant, like throwing out most of the concepts, throwing out the river corridor. But if they want to make small changes or formatting changes to make it easier to understand, that's also good. And then the select board, at that point, the select board, there's a new law, the Home Act, that allows rural towns with less than 2,500 people to adopt the zoning regulation bylaws legislatively. In other words, the select board could do it, or that in a bigger city, the municipal governing body can do it. Previously, small towns would have to do it by a town vote. So the select board have opted to make this bylaw adoption be a town vote, hopefully a town meeting day, which is why we'd really like to move the process along, because if we don't get it in time, we won't be able to warn it for town meeting. We won't be able to have that vote. And there are a couple of items in the zoning that really are important to adopt. One is the river corridor zone, because that enables the town to get better reimbursement during flood events, and the inclusion of the Goddard campus into the village district to allow the new owners of Goddard to have some flexibility in terms of pursuing other options. So those are the two things that are important to get through.
Can everyone, sorry, Will, there's a lot of, can everyone mute?
If you have any questions,
you can
contact AFT at 800.
Could we mute everyone who's not muted? I think I can do that.
Yes, I was going to say that, Will. If you're the meeting organizer, you can mute.
Yeah, I think, I just realized I have that power. I won't let it go to my head, but it was getting a little out of hand. So I guess that's the process. We have a hearing. There's a couple of changes I would like to propose, and I'll point that out right now. The draft shows a 40-foot maximum building width on a lot size, and that was a suggestion from the state. I might add that a lot of the changes that we're incorporating were suggested by the state, so the town can apply for a neighborhood development area, which will enable the town to have greater local control over a lot of the developments in town. So that 40-foot minimum was also included to have a building lot coverage of a certain percentage. And it made sense, if you had a building lot coverage, to have a building width minimum. But without the lot coverage, that at the last meeting we decided we didn't want to pursue, that 40-foot minimum doesn't make sense. So I'm proposing.
Will,
yep.
I think it's a 40-foot maximum, correct?
40-foot maximum. You're right. Got confused. The 40-foot maximum doesn't make sense. So I'm proposing we just delete that, because it doesn't make sense without the lot coverage. So that was my one suggestion for moving forward with some of the corrections that need to be made. So with that, that'll be one item. And then, so I'd like to open it up first for questions so we can clarify any questions, and then for comments. So I'm going to ask for raising hands if you can with Zoom, if you're comfortable with that, or just waving your hand is worth it, as I can see most people. So if there are any questions on the current draft, now would be a good time to get those out of the way. I see a hand. Jesse, you've got a hand in your room.
My name is Lena, Norway. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. My question is the river corridor and the markings that are on this new zoning and flood overlay district boundaries map actually covers my whole property. So I have 163 Martin Meadow, which is not in what I'm going to be talking about, but 147 Martin Meadow, which is 10.9 acres that I have along the river.
Yep.
I'm guessing about 8 acres is in flood zone, floodplain.
Yep.
And it did flood the last 2 times, and also Irene. But the other areas, which is about 3 or 4 acres, is not in the floodplain. But now it's in this river corridor, and I'm concerned because we have a mobile home, a big pad with a mobile home back there, but we removed the mobile home because we're going to build a little house there. And so I am concerned about the way they marked this map, and the way the river corridor is not correct, because it would not enable me to be able to build a house that I've been planning on for 12 years that I've owned the property. So is there a way to make this map a little bit more appropriately to the levels of the ground and things, instead of, it kind of appears that they just marked the whole thing. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely, and there is a way to do that, and we've done it in the past. Our house on the Brook Road was in the flood zone, and it wasn't in the flood zone, so we called out you can do a map amendment, and the river corridor experts will come out and look at your property and make those adjustments on site. We've done that to a number of properties in town. The river corridor the data from it is taken by aerial photos, and it's the best guess. But if you do have property that is impacted that way, there is a way to do a letter of map amendment, an LOMA. It's defined in the zoning that way, and that's the way to correct any really on-site, very detailed components. And I don't have the name of the person on hand, but I can dig it up and get it to you. And it's not a hard process, and it corrects the maps on site. It's just very difficult to make some of those very detailed. We're talking 50 feet. It could be. So yes, there is a way to make those corrections, and it is not a complicated process, and it doesn't cost anything.
Okay, so I have time to do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Even if this was in effect for 20, 30 years, you could still do those map amendments. It's a very common thing. I've done it on my house, and we've done it in a number of locations in town.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot.
Sure. I've got 2 hands up. The first one was Anne.
Hi, yeah. Did I hear you say we are not doing lot coverage, or we are doing lot coverage?
We're not going to do lot coverage.
Okay.
The decision was based on some comments from our zoning administrator, who basically said it's going to be very hard at this time to administer that on the scale that we've got. So we're going to,
on the scale that we've got in those with the new possible developments.
Well, the new developments will have their own. Anything over an acre has to have a stormwater permit. So any development that size has to go through the whole state process, which would be better than anything the town could administer.
So I'm not understanding what you mean by what you said sounded like there was too much to do.
Well, no, well, Karen, I'm going to let you speak to that just as you did at the last meeting.
I had spoke at the last meeting that we basically historically have been just doing setback requirements and not design review, unless of course it's in the historic district or historic. So I thought adding something new that we have no history of, and also as zoning administrator, I'm part-time, and so adding more layers to the zoning with no history behind it, I thought would be too complicated for this round. Not to say we shouldn't do it in the future, but this time around.
Okay. I had a question, but I've forgotten it. Thank you so much.
You can come back. Janice, you've got your hand up.
Hi, thanks. I'm curious about what you said about the NDA giving us more or greater local control. I mean, I read through the descriptions of the NDA a number of times, and it seems to me that what it does is it actually takes away community control. Once it's granted, Act 250 is taken away, and the ability of communities to appeal developments that aren't in character or that are ecologically damaging is taken away. So in what way does it give us more control? Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna Nikki Sabatos from our Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. She might have a little more detail in how that is going to work. Nikki, do you want to comment on that?
Yes. So your question is it Janice? You're saying the NDA is taking away community control? Is that the question?
Yeah, well, it's deregulating development, as far as I understand. That's one of the points of it, to allow, once it's agreed that an area is suitable for a certain kind of development, then there's no longer the ability for it says it's explicit in the description. There are in a couple of different sentences that's what it does. One is about the Act 250. The other is, I don't have the language right before me, but it's explicit that once it's granted, the neighbors and community members can no longer appeal on the basis of community character or environmental issues. So that's what it says. I didn't make it up.
Did you read that from the state website?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
There's some bullet points in the beginning. It's in the very basic, description.
Okay.
And I know George Springston also, who's also here, has read it as well, and other people. So we've discussed it a couple times.
Yeah, I would have to look into that further, but my understanding is it actually encourages more community interaction from a design point of view and how it's organized with its streetscape and walkability and access to existing development. So it's really, I think the intention is to encourage more housing choice in close proximity to existing development.
Well,
I'd have to look into the deregulation.
I can pick it up. I can find it for you right now. It's really easy, and I'll find it. But your point is that it allows more development, which gives us more. But that's not always a good thing, and it's not always what community wants, depending on the development.
Right. Yes.
And I understand that the state is working to deregulate in general and to deregulate Act 250 because we want more housing. I understand that that's the point of it, and I understand why we're doing that. However, it seems that if we're going to change the entire 130-acre Goddard campus to an NDA and the East Hill area that we are opening, we're taking away our normal community processes to oversee improper, infelicitous development. And that really concerns me, especially because we don't know if the extension project is going to go through. We don't know if Mike Davidson, the current beneficent owner is going to stay there forever. If it gets sold, then, you know, what's keeping us? What's keeping a developer from, you know, building all over it in any way he or she wants once we've given this neighborhood development designation? Very concerning to me.
Yeah, I wasn't aware the Goddard campus was going for the NDA at this moment. Is that right, Will?
Yeah,
it's just
we're contemplating doing it, but we haven't even formed the MDA, but it's something that we wanna look at for sure. And that's a later discussion, and essentially, but we wanted to have a zoning ordinance that would enable that to happen. In other words, if we wouldn't be able to pursue it without some of these components. And the local review with with the development review board is still a significant amount of a review.
Yeah, and just one more thing to add is, you know, with, you know, these zoning updates that are required with the NDA application, it's actually helping keep out, you know, bigger development with a lot of the criteria and complete streets and the building and lot patterns. So it really is encouraging small development. And so I'd have to look into further. I only know kind of what the requirements are for our end to keep it compliant.
Thank you.
Okay,
You're welcome.
thank you. John, you've got your hand up.
Yes, sir. I actually had a question and a comment. The comment first, why, or maybe it's a question too. Why are we putting the exact standards for what constitutes affordable housing in the plan when that's long? There are plenty of other standards that we could just refer back to rather than, oh my God, that's changed this year. We got to do it again. We got to change it again. We got to change it again. When if you just point back to the state or the federal standard, that seems simpler to me, quite frankly. But the real question I had was, so we've got all these rules and possible new rules. How are they enforced? Who actually goes out and makes sure that no one is living in a tent for more than 180 days or an RV or you know, all that stuff?
That's a very good question. And I'm afraid I'm going to turn that over to our zoning administrator once again. And it is a concern in town. Firstly, every development is defined in the regulations needs a permit. So the permit is the primary form of enforcement. And the secondary form of enforcement is a letter from the zoning administrator notifying the property owner of a violation. And Karen, I'm sure you can comment on this, having some experience.
The current process is if the zoning administrator receives a complaint, I go out and I do a site visit or a drive-by or whatever, just to see the complaint. And then if I find that the complaint is valid and it's a violation of zoning, I would write a violation letter. As zoning administrator, I do not go out and actively pursue, you know, like go drive around looking, you know.
Yeah, I did figure that.
So it is, I mean, as I say, this is my second job as a part-time job, and we've typically have had the zoning administrators have been a part-time job. So
that's right. So you're relying on someone else to keep track of, say, someone living in an RV for 180 days versus 179. I got it.
Yes, that would be a good, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sandy, you've got a question or a comment?
I actually just wanted to respond to the comments about the Act 250. I think it's important to be careful with terminology. So to my knowledge, we are not deregulating, in other words, reducing the criteria that would pass through a project through Act 250. What's happening is that the state is encouraging municipalities to adopt similar amounts of review. And what Act 250 has done particularly in the last legislative session, is reduce the opportunities for the public to respond and appeal. So that is a different issue, and that has already been substantially reduced at the state level for Act 250. So I think what Nikki says is correct, which is that citizens, neighbors, et cetera, actually have more opportunity to have input at the municipal level.
Philip, you've got your hand up. Thank you, Sandy.
Yeah, I have a question. I'd like to know if somebody can explain the difference between, or the similarity between, a development. That's the terminology that's been used right now. Alicia's saying you guys mean development area, which I think is two different things, and the expansion plan on Tobin's land. Because it seems to me that the woman that just was replying to Janice, who seems to be uninformed about her own job, is that if you look at South Burlington, and Chittenden County in general, they've been going full stream ahead with the NDA model. And I would like somebody to explain if I'm misunderstanding, because how can we have a design charrette with the Tobin property if we're planning on selling individual lots, unless someone has a subversive plan to buy the majority of those lots, then make quote unquote a development or a development area. So there seems to be a lot of confusion in your verbiage. And the fact that you've got a representative who doesn't actually understand the policies of her own organization is very troubling here.
Well, I'll read the definition of land development. The neighborhood development area is something different, but in the zoning regulations that we have existing, and there's old and new, land development that we're going to manage with this regulation bylaw is land development is the division of a parcel into two or more parcels, the construction, reconstruction, conversion, structural alteration, relocation, or enlargement of any building or other structure, or of any mining, excavation, or landfill, and any change in the use of any building or other structure or land, or extension of the use of that land. That's the existing language. We've also added, for floodplain management purposes, the land development shall mean any human-made change to improvement or unimproved real estate, including but not limited to buildings or other structures, mining, dredging, filling, grading, paving, excavating, or drilling operations, or storage equipment or minerals. So that's sort of the specific definition of land development that these bylaws.
Okay, that's great. Can you tell me what section in the planning that you're reading from so I can go back and look at it?
Yes, that's in the definitions. There's a section. Definitions. Yes, the definitions is really the first, after it's section 1.7, it defines all the terms in the bylaw and some terms that aren't in the bylaw, just like letter of map amendment. And so we try to, the zoning is pretty specific, or tries to be very specific for that development. And when we get into larger areas like the proposed village expansion, that comes under the subdivision regulations. So I'm not sure I answered your specific question.
Well, you gave me a place to look, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. The definitions can take a while to get to. They're pretty cut and dried. Any other questions, or can we move up to just comments? Where
I've got a question here in the meeting room.
Yep, we got another question.
I was wondering how many additional houses that the water sewer plant can handle before it needs to be expanded?
I believe the number is 147 hookups.
Okay, so not
That's,
very-
I'm not sure if that's completely accurate, but it's somewhere in that ballpark.
That's how many more can go on the system.
Before it need to be upgraded, right?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
I don't know.
that's the information we have, yeah.
Well, how many houses are they gonna put on Branch property?
Yeah, what's the thought?
Well, I believe
I don't, yeah, I think the idea was 37 dwellings were lost due to flooding this summer. And I hate to speak for them because the numbers aren't hard, but somewhere between 30 and 40 lots are going to be offered. And the idea is to move the 37 dwellings that were lost to higher ground. And so it wouldn't impact the sewage, the wastewater plant significantly because those dwellings had their hookups. They're no longer being used. So that's.
And so the Goddard are using the sewer and the water also.
The Goddard allocation has been the same. It's part of the development of the plant. They owned it from the beginning. They owned that allocation and they kept that allocation at their full capacity for all this time, even though they weren't using it. So it's still accounted for in the budget of wastewater use.
So they have a certain amount already?
Yes. Yes.
And how many is that? How many do they have already and how many do they use? Do you know?
I don't know, but the allocation is basically what they were when they were fully occupied, and they've kept that allocation. And some of those details, I don't think I'm not sure how they calculate it, but their new occupation, however they end up occupying the campus in the future, will be utilizing their existing capacity. I think is a.
And that's not included in the 147 additional.
No, the 147 is in addition, is on top of what was existing this summer, as I understand. Okay, I'm gonna open it up to comments, and then of course, if anybody has a question, please, please ask. But if anybody has any comments, how they feel about the zoning, things they don't like, things they like, I'll watch for the raised hands. And don't be shy, just because we're recording it. Oh, okay, John. Thank you. You raised your hand.
Yeah, well, I let you off the hook there, right?
Yeah.
I don't have a specific reason other than I don't like subdividing down to a tenth of an acre, quite frankly. I realize there are 11 lots in town that way, but that's only 11 lots out of the entire town. If we turn around and do that everywhere, it's going to be an absolute nightmare. I realize speaking specifically of the Tobin property, I realize they're planning on different lot sizes, but this would allow all of them to be a tenth of an acre, and I just don't get it. I'm against it, and I wanted that to be on the record. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Someone else?
Yeah, we've got some comments.
So if it went down to 1/10 of an acre, does that mean that people, like, say, I live in Martin Meadow, does that mean that people can just put more houses in between all the other houses? Can they subdivide what they have already and just add houses? He's muted.
If someone wanted to subdivide a parcel in the village, they could subdivide it. If they had a half acre, they could divide a tenth of an acre off to it and sell that. Yes, I mean the idea is to make it easier to put more houses in the village. That's the concept. Janice, I guess you're back.
I'm back. Thank you. I've said a number of these things before, but because this is the hearing, I'm just going to say them officially. And first of all, I want to thank the Planning Commission for all your incredibly hard work on this. I love the stuff about the trees and the lights. It's great. You know that I'm concerned about the reduction of the zoning. One of the reasons I'm concerned about it is because I feel that it is being rushed and pushed in order to facilitate the extension project, which is at present still just a proposal. I know that there are good arguments for increasing density near town centers. I know that our town plan says that we want to do that, but as I've said before, last time when I had laryngitis, so I'll say it again more clearly, there are other values in the town plan as well, which include preserving rural nature, preserving historical character, and also preserving neighbors' rights, taxpayers' rights to protect the character of the neighborhood that they live in. Now, however, the way I experienced the decision to go to 1/10 at the Planning Commission meeting about a month ago was that Will and I think Karen were considering just bringing it to the 1/5 that the state required. However, Sandy had said that the only way the extension project could be financially viable was with 1/8 acre minimum. Then it was decided that, well, 1/8 isn't that different than 1/10, so why not go to 1/10? But it disturbs me that this project that we don't yet know about is pushing a zoning change for the entire town. What I would suggest, what I would that seem to make more sense would do the PUD, which I learned what that was at the planning meeting about a month ago, the planned unit development. We would have control. We could have increased density in exchange for open space, and that would give us more control. The idea that as I said before, that the entire 130 acres of Goddard campus could now be open up for a complete coverage of that kind of development is disturbing. So the other thing I want to say in general is, I'm not against increased density. It's just that this complete throwing away of control and community input is troubling to me. The other question is just a more sort of philosophical question about what zoning is for, and is it to put things in place that assume that nobody is going to abuse them and nobody is going to take advantage of them? Because, at a couple of meetings, I feel that the answer to the concerns was, well, oh, nobody will do that. That's never happened before. This is a little town, et cetera, et cetera. And that's troubling because we don't know what somebody will do or will not do. And I think that the zoning should be there to protect us against bad development, against destruction of our environment, of our quality of life, of all these things, not based on an ideal. So I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I guess we have Philip's iPad as the next question or comment.
Hi, it's Alicia. Hi, Will.
Hi.
Good to see you in person. We've been going back and forth in email. Janice said a good deal of what I wanted to say. I think this is moving too quickly. I think, the 1/5 of an acre was my understanding was already a smaller lot size. I think there are unintended consequences. We don't know about how areas, both undeveloped right now and developed, could be further developed in ways that I'm not clear are congruent with the historic, environmental and cultural tradition and even values of the town. I like you very much, Will, and I hate to put you on the hot seat now for something that may have been sort of an off-the-cuff remark, but when someone asked about the zoning changes early on, you said, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's pretty near quote, well, there's the piece about Goddard, which is bringing it into the town, the village, and then there are the zoning pieces that are being driven by the expansion project. And it concerns me because I think that was very true. I think a lot of this is being driven by an expansion project that is not a formal part of the town governance, that there are people who have feelings about it all over the place, and there are people who haven't even heard about it. I'm glad there are going to be informational meetings, but I think the confluence of the two is there, and it's a little worrying. And I really would hate to see us lose what's good about the town. Do we need more businesses in town? Do we need more houses? Yeah, I remember when we had 5 stores, woo, and a lot more density. But the potential for, if you think about 1/10 of an acre and all the areas that could be filled in, and having maybe 1 or 2 cars and the traffic, I think that we don't really know where that's going to take us. So thank you.
I can't figure out how to do the button.
Yeah, those are legitimate concerns that we want to hear.
Okay.
And
so should we go? Oh.
Anne, would you like to? I see your hand is up again.
Yes, hi. I'm wondering things like apartment buildings, or I saw that there's a possibility that Downstreet might build an 8-unit apartment building. I know that Habitat Humanity is thinking about building some multi-dwelling units. So I'm just wondering, like, you have this minimum 1/10, but then you have these things that are a lot more dense than that. And I don't understand how do apartment buildings work? And that, I guess that's my question. How do they work when you have that kind of a minimum? How does it get figured out?
It's a complicated. You're getting into some concepts of density, and the way we have it now is we have a multi-dwelling unit. A dwelling unit, a portion containing 3 or more dwelling units. It would have to get a building permit. And one option, and I think it's a pretty good one, is to that any dwelling unit over 5 or more, or 4 or more, needs to have go before the development review board. The development review board has a lot of capacity to regulate and make suggestions on how development occurs. So bringing up that apartment thing, I'd like to make toward the end of the meeting a proposal that those we have a development review board oversight at a certain level of multi-unit, and that's how I think we could handle that.
So does that mean that I guess sorry.
Nope. Hold on, the muting is coming and going on your phone.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, we got you.
Okay, sorry. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is, who is the development review board? Do we have one yet, or is that something that needs to be created?
Yeah. If the development review board they review the subdivision applications, and so they have significant oversight of development.
And who are they? Are they a town board?
Yes, they are appointed town boards, and they have their own website, and they have they hold hearings. Great. And
thank you.
Yeah. Let's see else.
I also just want to mention that we have some folks in the room here who want to make a comment.
Okay, I'm going to go to one more of the raised hands, and then we'll go to your room, Jess. Thanks.
Great.
Peter. Peter, did you make a comment? Just have to get that mute button. Okay, we'll come back in a minute. We'll go to Jesse.
Unmuted.
Oh, there
okay.
it is. There, you got it. Okay.
Okay, this is Lauren Geiger participating with Peter Young together, and we're both on the Village Expansion Steering Committee. And I would like to just make a few comments, one of which is that it's my understanding that even if we made these changes that allowed for a 1/10 of an acre lot for the village expansion area and for Goddard, that doesn't mean that that would be extended to other areas of Plainfield and that it would automatically become some, overpopulated, totally dense area, that would, those kinds of changes would have to be brought forth in other kinds of actions. So I personally, living on a 1/10 of an acre lot in the village, I am in support of these changes, and it's largely because I feel a sense of urgency about the people who lost their housing in the flood. And I know that there are people who lost everything in the Heartbreak Hotel who have intentionally chosen to live in Plainfield or wanted to, and now can't. And the reason for the 1/10 of an acre lot size suggestion, which is just one of the options in the village expansion area, is that those would be affordable for people. And with the crisis happening in Vermont for housing, both in central Vermont and around Vermont, and in order to have a viable and a vital workforce and population, and also to replace the grand list taxpayers that we're losing and the water and sewer users that we're losing, that this would be a way to allow people who have lost their homes, some of whom might be getting FEMA reimbursements in the spring, to actually continue to live in Plainfield, the community that they have chosen and really want to live in. I also don't see the traffic issue as a major issue, in that the village expansion area is proposing to replace the number of units that were lost. And so it's not like it's adding a tremendous number of residents to the town. It's basically replacing those who were lost. For example, the Heartbreak Hotel had 8 units. Some of those people had multiple cars. We're proposing perhaps apartment building with 8 units, same size as the Heartbreak. And I also think that, we're having 2 information sessions, one on Thursday night, January 9th, one on Sunday, January 12th, and then another opportunity for people to come forth and ask questions on February 8th. And so I would just encourage people to continue to learn about these proposed projects. The other thing that I would say is that based on what you said, Will, the other night, is that Mike Davidson at Goddard does not intend to do any new building, that he is intending to renovate the existing spaces at Goddard and make more housing available there. So I don't see that he is intending to do any kind of major development. And I'm assuming that if someone were to come forth to purchase Goddard from Mike Davidson in the future, that any kinds of other, additional development would have to face the same kind of scrutiny that we're talking about now. So anyway, those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've got some people at the town meeting room that want to have a comment. So Jesse, you want to enable that?
So Will, I just want to clarify that you're looking to expand the village district to Goddard and to the East Hill site. Is that correct? Or is it an area that I'm not aware of?
Yeah, the East Hill, we haven't changed that. That was it's in the existing village now, but we're adding Goddard. And we're adding it because they can't do, whoever buys it, whoever does anything with it, they can't do anything with it to speak of. They have no commercial uses. It's basically, it was able to exist as its own entity, as an educational facility. So they could do everything under that umbrella. Whoever buys it, whoever uses it, it's going to be so severely limited that it almost makes it could be a museum.
I'm clear on it, and you're looking at a 1/10 of an acre lot size change to the village.
Yes.
What are the setbacks on that 1/10 of an acre?
Excuse me, I didn't quite get that.
He was wondering, sorry, there is a question, a comment for you to just say what your name is.
Oh, Doug Weinrich, I'm sure you know.
I think I can pull that up. He's asking what are the setbacks in the village district?
You want to do that, Jesse?
I think I've got that here. So lot frontage minimum is 50 feet for 1/2 acre or less. Width minimum 50 feet for lots of 1/2 acre or less. 100 feet for lots over 1/2 acre. Front setback minimum, the proposal is for it to be 8 feet as measured from the property line. And that's a change from the past. They measured it from the center of the road. And 5 feet from the side. And 10 feet for accessory structure and uses.
No back setback.
I don't see a back setback unless
the back the front, it's front, rear, front setback and rear minimum. There's a rear minimum of 5 feet. So there's a front setback of 8 feet and a rear minimum of 5 feet, if you look at that.
What is the lot area minimum now?
Quarter acre.
Quarter. Okay, thank you.
Has the town looked at, you're talking about density, has the town looked at any other districts to make any changes, or is it just the village district?
Just the village for density, yes.
Is there a reason for that?
Well, part of it is we did expand the rural residential to have it come a little further out away from the village. So the 2 acre minimum becomes usable. And then the forest and ag, we left alone. The 5 acres, we haven't really discussed changing that slower. There are concepts. Some towns look at just having the ability to, it's based on ability to get a wastewater permit. But we haven't done that yet. It's something, we can look at moving forward.
Just one other comment. Years ago, when I was sitting there with you, there was a term called spot zoning.
Yes.
How is this not that? If it's 2 very specific pieces of property, how is that not spot zoning?
Well, the proposals we're making are for the entire village district, and we're including Goddard in that district. So spot zoning would be to create a specific regulation on one piece of property, including properties in a standard district. I don't think becomes spot zoning, because we're including if we were to say, a 1/10 of an acre only on one piece of property but not everywhere else, that would constitute spot zoning. But since the regulations we're proposing are for the entire district, that's why it's not. Back to Alicia. Wait, hold on a minute. Jesse, were there any other comments in the room? Okay, we're going to go back to Alicia.
Alicia has to find the unmute button. Thanks, Will. I don't want to spend the whole evening talking about the expansion plan. There's another venue for that, but I do feel compelled to respond that I don't think to Laura's comment that I don't think either Janice nor I were proposing that our concerns were that all over Plainfield we would increase density as a result of this 1/10 of an acre rezoning. We were in fact referring to the possibility, as Will just said, that anywhere in the village now you could subdivide, and that would increase density, perhaps more than we want, maybe not, but I think it's a legitimate concern. And regarding traffic and the number of houses lost, my understanding is that 37 families or households were displaced, not 37 to 40 lots or houses. And this is what's being proposed, some of which may be multi-unit dwellings. So we are talking about very likely increasing traffic and increasing it not evenly throughout the village, but in a concentrated area. So that's just my clarification about what my concerns were earlier. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Julie, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I finally headed up the other way too. So here.
Yes, oh, yeah. Well, it's yellow. Your wall's kind of yellow. The yellow doesn't hand up that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
David Scheckman is here with me, and he'd like to make some comments.
Yeah, I think regarding the 1/10 of an acre, what I don't quite understand is what the advantage of having a 1/10 of an acre is when, and the loss of control that comes with that, when it could be a conditional use instead. It having a smaller, clearly there's small lots in the village, but the average lot size is much higher than a 1/10 of an acre. I didn't add them all up, but I kind of looked at the parcels, and so it's unclear to me why the proposal is to go so much lower than the state will accept when there still could be smaller parcels. They would just have to be conditional use, which then gives the town control over how many small lots there are so that they don't all become small lots. I know the proposed development is going to propose different size lots, but that doesn't mean that's the way it would stay into the future. And so other people have said the same thing. We're pretty skeptical about the 10th acre part, particularly that. I think we also think that, not speaking for Julie completely, but that it's moving this part. I know you've been working on the zoning a long time and you've done a great job for the town, but this is moving really fast. And I know there's some pressing issues for people being rehoused and all of that, but it's going to take years no matter what, several years. And, it's just pretty quick for the changes that it's going to make. And I think my sense as a builder, as someone who's been around a long time, Plainfield, this will have a lot of impact. It's not just going to be, oh, there's some more village. The houses are not going to look the same. They can't. They certainly can't and be affordable. So I'll focus on the 10th acre and say, our sense is that that's really too small a however you say it, a minimum size or a maximum size, and that with the facility of conditional use, there could still be some small lots. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. I'm not sure the guidelines for why you would make it a conditional use would be clear, but that's not a bad thought. I would have to look into that. I looked into having it be a variance, and that's not an easy thing to do. So making it a conditional use is one option. It might need some research. But clearly the 10th of an acre is getting people's interest involved in the zoning, and which is a good thing. But the planning commission tossing it around is still looking at making these lots affordable for people because of the cost of housing. The mortgage rates just went to 7%. And
right. And I know a smaller lot, it would be more affordable to some extent, but remember, everybody, that the cost of the lots is really going to be just a proportion of the cost of building new homes. And kind of really a relatively small proportion, because they're still going to need water, they're still going to need electricity, they're still going to need sewer, they're still going to need sidewalks. And the cost of building is regrettably very high. And I know there'll be habitat, or hopefully maybe there'll be habitat, or maybe some other ways of doing affordable housing, but it's going to be the houses that are going to determine whether these spaces are affordable or not. And the difference between a tenth of an acre lot and a quarter of an acre lot, I don't know what it's going to be, but it's not a factor of a half or something like that. It's a much smaller factor if they're going to be priced equitably, and that's a whole issue in and of itself.
Well, I will point out that in the village, the only way to get to that small size is to have access to water and sewer, which would be included in the price of it. So
yeah. I'm just saying that there's water and sewer. The price for that for a 10th acre lot or a quarter acre lot is the same, more or less.
No,
right?
he's saying no.
Yep. Okay. Annie.
Hi. Yeah, thank you. I'm really enjoying the conversation, everyone. Thank you very much. And I support changing the zoning so that we can have more control in where the growth happens. And the growth would happen in the village. And I live in the village now, and I really miss all my neighbors who lost their homes in the flood. And I really learned that Plainfield is a great town and I love it, but it's not really about what the buildings look like. It's really the people. And so I would love to see some of the people that lost their houses be able to afford to stay in Plainfield. And I think that multi-unit dwellings is probably the most affordable way for that to happen. And I think that we should pass this zoning change so that we can keep that growth in the village. And we get that control then, where that's where it would happen. And that way we can get growth. People can have housing, they can have affordable housing, and it gets to be in an area that we're controlling. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Janice, you had your hand up. Did you want to have another comment or?
Initially, I had my hand up to say that Julie had her hand up, but there were, since you've asked, I guess I was going to say that, I've looked at some of the draft numbers for the expansion projects lots. And they were saying that for the 1/10 acre, maybe 30,000, and for the 1/4 acre, and these are probably changed by now, so I don't even know. This was about a month ago, 71,000. So the question is whether for those 14 lots, I think they're saying that would be affordable. That sounds actually pretty great. Maybe if they could get help from Habitat, then to build a house for 100,000 and then you have 130,000. I certainly don't have 130,000, but maybe that's easier than sort of more. But the question is then for whether we'd be able to sell the other ones for 70,000 for people who then are going to want to build a house for 500,000 in a place where they don't know what anything's going to look like. All these, but this is really a point for the extension project, not for this. But I wanted to just circle back to my initial question, which I don't know if people saw in the chat that Jesse had put up some language from the state about the NDA, and then I also put up some other language from the NDA, and George had pointed out that he thought that indeed I was correct, that we were giving away local control by doing the NDA because of this one phrase that says, let's see, let me get it here. I'm sorry, now I can't find it. A local conditional use decision that a housing project meets the character of the area criteria cannot be appealed. So the idea is that once it's been decided, once it's been designated a development area, it cannot be appealed. A development in this area cannot be appealed. I feel that it used to say something about the environment on there as well, but I don't see it there anymore. Maybe the language has been changed. But, That's it. I've talked enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna we have two representatives of the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission at the meeting. And the Planning Commission in Plainfield relies on their expertise because we're not experts. And so I'm gonna ask either of them if they wanna weigh in on the concept of having a lot size minimum be, say, let's say we say it's a 1/5 acre, which is the state standard. And then 1/10 of an acre can be a conditional use. Is that something that happens? It seems like it's appealing to a lot of the folks who have anxiety about the 1/10 of an acre. And the Planning Commission doesn't want to have our zoning, not pass because of that anxiety. We want to address that. So, Kristen, you're shaking your head. Oh, yeah.
No, I don't want to get into it.
Okay, if you could
No.
introduce
Let me introduce myself. Christian Meyer. I'm with the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. To answer your pointed question, Will, in briefest of terms, no, I don't know the answer of subdivision law and whether or not you can have conditional uses for a smaller thing. But we can certainly get you that answer within the week if there are other municipalities in the state who have done things that way. Broadly speaking, when you think about minimum lot size, you're not assuming that all lots are going to end up being the minimum lot size. It's the bottom threshold, not the prescribed size of every lot in a development. I don't want to go further than that, but
yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot. Okay. The other possibility that I've been tossing around is having a 1/10 of an acre be the minimum lot size in the village. But for a subdivision, we divide subdivisions as 3 or less as minor, 3 or 4 or more as major, and we could put a limit on the number of 1/10 acre lots within that major subdivision of, say, 30%, 40%, some number that people would feel comfortable. So a large subdivision couldn't be all 1/10 acres, because I think that's an anxiety like I keep hearing. So there are a couple of ways that we could address that. We could still have small lot sizes in small numbers. I guess that's what it comes down to, because 1 or 2 isn't that big an impact. But yeah, Goddard takes that and throws in, we want to put 50 1/10 of an acre lots. I don't think anybody wants to see that. But if we have the 1/10 of an acre language like we do now, it's possible. So maybe there's a way to mitigate that problem. Does that resonate with some of the people who have concerns about the small lots? David, does that make sense to you? Are you still here? Oh.
Yeah, I think that sounds like it could help. The one of the questions we thought of was, what would be the possibility that, there's this beautiful subdivision and, very well thought out, but sometime in the future, the people who could afford to buy the 1/4 acre lots, which sounds like maybe are planning to subsidize the small lots, decide to subdivide. So it wouldn't, it wouldn't address that, but that's probably not as important a thing to address as wholesale 1/10 of an acre lots. So, I think anything that moves in the direction of a little more control and looking into the future of what might happen without being too paranoid about it would be helpful.
Okay, thanks. Anne, you've got your hand up again.
So,
again, we have a comment when there's a
okay.
Okay. So I'm curious, if we include Goddard in the village and Goddard decides to build things, is that a subdivision, or they're already in the village and they're not a subdivision?
If they subdivide their property, they would be a subdivision. If they build something on their property and keep it as one parcel, it would be a building permit on that parcel.
So if they decide to put up a new 50 unit apartment house, that would be on and keep it as theirs, that would not be a subdivision, right?
I believe, no, unless they divide the property, it wouldn't be a subdivision.
Okay, and there's other rules around why they can't do that?
Why they can't do
a 50 unit apartment building?
Well, that's why the proposal of putting a multi dwelling unit as a development, as subject to DRB review.
Okay, great.
Might be something added to the draft.
Okay, thank you. If they sold pieces off, that would be a subdivision.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Jesse, you want to? Jesse, you want to get the?
Okay.
Jesse, I think you're muted or frozen. One of the.
Oh, we're
sorry. Okay, we're unmuted. Sorry, can you say?
Okay.
Didn't really come out right. I was wondering if you can add in something where the existing residences are not able to have the same 1/5. No, I mean, because it covers the whole village, and there's people that already have homes on sites, like I spoke about earlier. Could there be language in it that makes it so that existing homes can't subdivide or use the 1/5 or 1/10? I mean,
well, part of the idea of having the smaller lot was to allow for what's known as infill housing. So it's something that if you look at a map of the village, there are a few parcels where you could fit a smaller lot. Now, the new Home Act allows accessory dwellings on every. We can't restrict that. So every parcel can build an accessory dwelling unit on it. That is now state law. So the idea of including the 1/10 acre in the village is to allow for a smaller lot being located between other lots, existing lots. So that's the planning commission sort of to get more houses being available in the village.
So the
accessory dwellings are allowed on every parcel in the state by the news Home Act.
Is there some process to be able to do that? Like get your neighbors?
Not anymore. No, it allows, you need a building permit to do it, but it essentially allows anyone who has a property and could locate a small house, that didn't violate any of the other restrictions of setbacks and every other regulation that's there. Anyone could do that on their property.
In 400 square foot.
And
they've got to be under 400 square feet.
In the old zoning, the current draft does change that to 1,100.
Wow. That's a house.
Okay, thanks.
That's not an accessory dwelling.
Yeah.
That's a house. Yeah. I have a question. Are manufactured homes going to be restricted from this, or I don't think you can because of HUD laws.
No,
so
we can't restrict that.
Housing.
Yeah, manufactured housing are a good way to build. Yeah,
that's the only way you're going to get it affordable.
Right.
Yeah, $30,000 lot. You're going to cost you another 30 to develop it, and another 60, 70, 80,000 for a mobile tiny house, something. So you're talking, you're still affordable, but you're talking a lot of money.
Affordable is expensive these days.
all better ones, you can get them cheaper, 90,000. Of course, secondhand too. You can buy something secondhand as long as it's unapproved, 1976 or whatever it was.
Okay, Jesse, is that it for the room?
I think so.
Okay, thank you. Aaron, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I just would like to reiterate that because the subdivision has to go through the DRB and present a cogent plan about how the land is laid out, that the specifics of a subdivision showing up in every single lot is a tenth of an acre lot, that would strike me as an unreasonable proposal to the DRB, and a lot of time to have conversation around that, and the hypotheticals that would lead us to believe that we need to protect from that in the zoning do not seem realistic to me. And I think therefore we should defer to the DRB and have those conversations if that real situation shows up. Therefore, I strongly would advocate for making sure that we don't do these percentages, that we set a minimum lot size just like everyone else, and we look at subdivision plans as they're actually proposed, rather than how they could theoretically be proposed, when we all know the action requires the DRB to review these sorts of things to make sure that nobody's coming up with crazy ideas.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments?
We have a comment.
Okay.
Will.
Yep.
The DRB does not hear exempt subdivisions, correct, Will?
Could you repeat that? I couldn't
You're
quite get it.
The DRB does not hear exempt subdivisions, correct?
Correct.
So if I had a quarter-acre lot in the village, I could literally subdivide that, put an accessory building on one lot, and I meet the zoning.
Yes.
Assuming all the setbacks are correct.
Yes.
Just so you know, it's the non-exempt subdivisions that do get heard by the DRB, not the singles or exempts.
Correct. Oh, Aaron's got his hand up again, I think. Aaron, do you?
Sorry, no, I just didn't know how to lower it on my phone. I apologize.
Okay.
Let me figure out how to lower this.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
That's all right. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. If not, if the planning commission has been working on the draft for a couple of years, and we get to the point where it gets, where we go back and try to fix everything, and it won't be a perfect document. I'm going to admit that right off the bat. But I'm also have faith that the process of adoption has many avenues for change. And if we pass this, or we vote to recommend that this draft moves forward, the select board can make changes. They can make those changes at their hearing, and the select board could say there's too much controversy around the 10th. We'll live with a 5th. And the planning commission can make some recommendations on how that might be done if a conditional use is viable. And after the select board approves it, hopefully it'll recommend it for a town vote, and the town can vote how they want to proceed. And if there's enough people who like the zoning as it is, they'll vote for it. And if there are a lot of people who don't like it, they'll vote against it. And even if that happens, if it passes, and there's still people in town who don't vote for it or who don't agree with it, 5% of the voters in the town, which is 56 people, can petition the town for another vote and vote on it again. Or 56 people can propose an alternative zoning or a modified zoning and put that up. for approval by the select board. So if this zoning does get approved by the town, it's not like a bolt of lightning is gonna carve the words into a block of granite, and there's gonna be a guy out front of the town hall with long gray beard, a tunic and sandals and saying, this is it forevermore. Everything can be changed. There'll be lots of options to modify. And I'm sure we'll find some things that need changing before the select board. We'll probably make a few recommendations. And even after that, I think the planning commission needs to do constant reviews on what works and what doesn't work, which I mentioned at the last meeting, that we should have maybe at least a yearly update on the zoning rather than have a big, large one. So I'm going to ask for a motion from the planning commission. Well, first I should let the planning commission members speak, and then we'll take a motion. So Karen's waving her hand.
I've yet to figure out the how you raise your hand button, but it also keeps me from talking too much. Can everybody hear me? You had mentioned early in the meeting that to consider taking the 40 feet out of the village district. Were we still considering that at this point, Will?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense without a lot requirement. I was speaking with Nikki this morning, and yeah, it was a package and it got stuck in there. It basically doesn't make sense by itself. So I would like to take that out.
Okay, and you mentioned something else more about subdivision that you wanted. That was
well,
no, it was a multi-unit dwelling.
Yes, we just define a multi-unit dwelling as 3 or more, and that's it. But I think if we had a DRB review of 3 or more dwelling units, and that would help. What about a 50-unit apartment building or a real big apartment building in the town?
And that's something you would like to recommend doing today?
Yeah, put it in the draft that goes to the select board.
Okay, couple other comments. So I think it's important that people understand that there are conditions that can be placed during a development review board. For example, one could say the quarter acre could never be subdivided in that area. It could also say lots can't merge. So there is a way to protect the lot sizes that maybe happen in this village district, that whole expansion project. I'm interested to think about Goddard because Goddard is 1 unit. And we don't really have a plan there has to be a big plan made on Goddard, how they're even going to be able to do any development, because there's only our zoning doesn't allow at this point in time, a bunch of accessory buildings. I really think that Goddard's going to have to come in and do a whole plan. That's going to be a whole process for Goddard, because right now they don't have any real, there's no real zoning because they were educational. So I think Goddard's going to have there's going to have to be a whole DRB review for a plan for Goddard. So I'm not seeing a bunch of big buildings going up there immediately, and I don't see a lot of subdivision going on because they don't even have a plan right now. So I just wanted to bring that point up because I think we need to really focus that we can't let our concerns we need to pass the zoning because we have to have river corridor. We need to have cannabis language. There's a lot of other things in this zoning that are really important that it passes. So I just want that to be clear to people because it really needs to happen. So I guess that's my last thing. So Jesse or Will?
Jesse, you wanna go?
Yeah, uh-oh.
Oh,
Hold on. Hold on.
good save. Hopefully he can figure it out.
I tried muting the audio on the screen for the moment and I'll put it back on. And actually, maybe I can put the audio on my
It sounded good right now.
computer just in case anyone jumps in. Sorry, I'm trying to wield two different Zooms here. Yeah, I think that I'm compelled by Will's point about there being many opportunities to continue to revise these zoning regulations as we go. And I've also been really compelled by a lot of the comments that Karen has made to the effect of there are a lot of layers of review that happen for sort of the more unusual or atypical kinds of developments that can happen in the community. And I think I don't think it's a perfect document either, but I do think it's the right time to send this version over to the select board and let the conversation continue in that context. I'd like to hear the select board weigh in on it. I'd like to hear some of the different ways that they might address some of these questions. But I think it's a reasonable draft to push forward, and I'm inclined to do that. I'm going to unmute now.
Okay.
Okay, we're back.
So I think we could make a motion, or we could entertain a motion to forward this draft to the select board with the provision that we may make suggestions. We've got probably 15 or 20 days before their hearing to come up. I'd do some research about some conditional use options and maybe a site plan review for a single lot like Goddard. So we can add those in. I'll suggest the motion to forward the draft to the select board with possible changes. Keep it simple. Motion should be simple.
I'm going to second that motion.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion between the planning commission members? Okay, well, this is a moment of truth. All those in favor of forwarding the draft with some possible suggestions, please vote. You have to unmute to vote. Or I guess you could raise your hand. All those, Jesse, you're still muted.
Aye.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're gonna send this on. We're gonna send it out. It's like sending your kids out to college, get them on the road, get it going. I want to thank everybody for coming, because when it's just the three of us, we don't have anywhere near as much input. I don't think we come to the same good decisions that we do with everybody helping. So I guess that's it. Once again, thanks for everybody showing up, and hopefully you'll be at the select board meeting, and we'll keep moving forward. So thanks, everybody. Motion to adjourn. Okay. Night.
Thank you.
Okay.